Yeah.
Then I get a break for a couple of weeks and I go back to having a life. And then it's like, it just, you know, I've been doing this for so long. It just, okay, I got to be here. Okay, I got to be there and whatever.
A better question, Rick, is ask her what time she starts emailing in the morning after night meeting.
I try not to get those crazy early morning emails out to you guys, but every once in a while I slip. Peter, I know, I'm like, oh, I can send him a 5:30 in the morning email. He's
Oi, 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 oi.
yeah, we get up at 4 in my house.
4.
Wow.
Wow. Okay.
On purpose?
Only when snowstorms. This morning, 6:24, that's about typical. Maybe we've talked earlier than that.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're just waiting for Carrie, right? So give it another minute and then we'll get started.
All right.
And this wasn't just chat this morning at 6:24. It was like incredibly heavy stuff with lots of numbers and okay, let's get it all out of the way early, then we can kind of kick back for the day.
I did put my feet up around 3 o'clock and I said, all right, I'm just going to rest for a minute. And I checked my email and Bob was looking for something. I was like, okay, back to the salt mines. And it wasn't a big deal, but I was like, you know, because that happens. Somebody needs something. It's like, okay, just do it.
Can I offer, while we're still kicking around here, just a word of advice? As you approach your retirement age, you better think about what you're going to do with all this extra time.
I have no extra time and I'm retired.
Well, yeah, here, there's Carrie.
Hi, Carrie. Oh, she's connecting.
Here I am. Sorry about that little Zoom trouble, but
Hey, Carrie.
I
Hey,
think I
Carrie.
figured it out. Hello. Sorry to be late.
All right, so let's get started. We'll call the meeting to order. So tonight, it looks like we're not going to have any public comment. We'll review and approve the minutes. We need to just talk a little bit about what Peter's doing about contracting outsourced services, and then get an update on that regional health grant that we talked about last time. Couple items under influenza vaccination, the usual COVID updates, and next meeting agenda. And I thought what we could do is, since Jenna is here, we could just perhaps after we review the minutes, we can talk about civic and recreation permit issues and kind of get that piece done. And then we'll move on to the agenda. Are there other agenda items that we should add or other comments? No?
Not on my part.
Good. So, all right, so in terms of the minutes for March 4th, people had a chance to review them. I didn't see any.
Nor did I.
No.
I just had one small correction. It references that I said I had met, it references the resilience piece. I met with both Sammy and with Erica. I just don't want to leave Erica out. So it was Erica McNamara and Sammy Salkin.
Okay.
Thanks, Jackie. Thanks.
So
Okay.
I move that we accept the minutes
With that,
Second.
with that.
As
with that
amended,
Yeah.
correction.
roll call, Paula,
Yes.
Carrie,
Yes.
Rick, yes. Okay, minutes are approved with that.
Nice job, Jackie. Thank you.
She always does
Yeah.
an awesome job.
Yes, for sure. Okay, so why don't we move down to civic and recreational permit issues, which is why Jenna's here. Welcome, Jenna. So we brought this up at the last meeting, briefly. And so we thought it would be important to kind of have a conversation at this meeting. And Peter and I have talked, and I know Peter and Jen have talked as well about how to approach this. And, you know, we're likely to have, as the weather warms up, an onslaught of these requests, and we're still in the middle of the pandemic. And last year, we spent a lot of time trying to sort through, you know, what kind of feedback the Board of Health would give the Recreation and Civic Department about various types of gatherings and school and camp issues and so forth. And I think, and I remember when I sort of joined the board in the summer, middle of the summer, we were in the thick of it, and there were a lot of these coming fast and furious. And they all sort of died off with the autumn leaves. But, you know, as I thought about it, and as we've talked since that meeting, we were in a very different place last spring and summer, because we were in the middle of the pandemic and it was raging and there were no vaccinations in sight. But also, people weren't as attuned to what you had to do. Maybe now, even now, people aren't attuned, but and
Yeah.
there wasn't a whole lot of statewide guidelines. You know, the state was sort of developing these guidelines as we were going. They were changing continuously, and so there was a lot of effort on the part of this board to try to keep in touch with that, and then you know, make those recommendations. I think what's materially different, and then I'll just turn it over to Peter and Jenna, as we sit here today, is that these guidelines have been evolving. They still evolve, but I think they're pretty clear cut around a wide spectrum of different activities. And, you know, you go on the website and it says, do this, do this, do this. And then you look at what someone would like to do in terms of an activity, and you just match them up. It's not terribly clinical. It's really more just working on that and understanding that. So, and I also know that last year, it really took up a lot of people's time to work through these, and it was pretty tough. So Peter and Jen have come up with an approach, and I'm going to turn it over to them. I don't know who wants to go first, about how we might look at this going forward for 2021.
Well, I'll go first just to kind of introduce it, but before anything else, we need to acknowledge the incredible work that Kerry is doing. And it wasn't until Monday morning of this week that I didn't feel that she was reaching out in desperation, but she was going to ask, I need a little bit of help by now. They were just rolling in. But she has amended the way we review it, put together a matrix that has sections of the guidelines. And I don't know where you get the time, Kerry, to do all this stuff, and then deal with the people on a one-on-one-to-one basis. I mean, I'll tell you the truth. Kerry and I spoke, and some of the I don't know if they're quite horror stories. They sounded kind of intense to me, but anyway, she deserves credit for everything she's doing. But this is not work for a board member. This is work for your staff. Board of Health has a staff, and that includes the team beneath the board, that Recreation and other departments, other divisions that Jean manages, that all are pulling together right now. I say this so frequently, I feel like I'm getting shallow about it, but it's true, the teamwork that we all rose to such an occasion. And I say we, I just happen to be floating along for the ride, but this town hall business here in Reading, just in the time I've been here in November, I'm really impressed with how everybody just pulls together and gets the job done. So that it was right from there that we started to cautiously approach Jenna to say, you got any ideas on how, we can help? And we'll circle back. I'll turn it over to Jenna in just a moment. We'll circle back and touch up Christine, who also said, yeah, I'm there too if you need something. But Jenna, I think, I'm grateful she's here, and I'm going to let her take over, and then, just outline quick, however long it takes, but I think you can simplify things a lot more than I can, Jenna. And what we figured out earlier this week and how it should run in your view. We'll see how the board wants to take it from there. Thanks.
Sure. So I second everything that the board has been doing. I find everybody to be tremendously helpful, and certainly people who are looking to get their plans approved and things like that, they don't necessarily know sometimes that things take time, and there's a process, and that someone who's a volunteer on a committee is up at 12 o'clock at night doing this and working on these matrices and working hard. So I really appreciate all the work you're doing, and certainly it hasn't been an easy task, and it is frustrating for everybody, right? Because we've got emails flying back and forth because you're working full time, and so it's a lot. And I think everyone's done a tremendous job on the board, and I know that we're kind of just a small little slice in everything that you all have been doing. So I'm very, very appreciative to everybody. But with all that being said, I don't want to ramble too much, but Peter did give me a call this week and just said, hey, Jenna, these are flooding in. Do you have any ideas? And I said, well, quite honestly, I don't mind taking this over and reviewing the plans as a preliminary reviewer, because to be quite honest, I was looking through, but just not extensively, right? So now that Carrie has the matrix, and I do have a better handle, being almost a full year into COVID and being a little bit more familiar with the guidelines, I really think that I can hammer down and get them done efficiently and get them done correctly. And then also, after I do that, I'll kick it to the public health nurse, and then kick it to Peter for final approval. So that way we're taking volunteer board members out of it completely. So if you guys are comfortable with that method, I'm more than willing to step up and work with the nurse and Peter moving forward.
Can I just ask Christine, you don't feel this would be overwhelming on top of what you're already doing?
I do agree that I would need to separate some time, to make, I would need to make some time to do it. Although I do feel that the cases have come down a little bit, so I would have a little bit of more time to do that.
Okay. That was my only concern.
Just a couple of questions. So there's a reference to a matrix that I'm dying to hear. What exactly goes into this? I'm just trying to wrap my head structurally around what you have set up, because I agree with the idea in general. Jenna, I think you're more than capable to do this, especially if there's something that's an easy template, so to speak, for you to work from a guideline. So is that kind of what we're talking about here? Carrie, what's this matrix that you've created?
So all it is, so the guidance came out the beginning of July. It shifted some in July and August, some small variations. It's been pretty constant since, and therefore the form has been constant since August. And it's not super linear. So what I did, I mean, it's 13 pages. And once you've reviewed a few plans, it's pretty easy. You know what you're looking for. You just have a mental tab of, I'm looking to make sure it's their fist pump, that they address fist pumps, they address carpooling. So I just made a list of that, so that it's a little form that all I did was then say it's addressed, or if there are notes, there's a little spot where you can put the notes and say, fix this, or make sure you include this. And it's a cover sheet. I thought it would be helpful for Jenna when I was passing them back, so that if their questions came up, and then also for the different sport teams, because as Jenna knows well, everybody's plan comes in very differently. And while the guidance is static, folks aren't familiar with it. Are still surprised that they have to do things like wear face coverings. So it's I thought that rather than it just being an email with a yes, this is good, or no, fix this, I thought it would be helpful to just lay out what are the pieces that we're looking at in there. And it sounds like Jenna liked it, Peter liked it.
So is the
Okay.
matrix a tool that Jenna is using to evaluate these requests, or is this something you kind of hand back to the entity that's trying to get a permit and show them this? Which is it? The first of them?
Both.
Both.
So it's my review form that I returned to Jenna, and then it can be returned to so that was when I was doing it, right? This is for those 8 plans that I did the last couple weeks. So it shows my work. Jenna can see it, and then it shows, and then it can be shared with the
Applicant.
applicant. That's the word. Thank you, Peter. Yeah. So it makes it a little bit more transparent. And then you can do things like say, yeah, on page this, whatever, there's the thing. And I mean, the part of the reason why, and Paula knows this too, and part of the reason why we board members were reviewing last fall was that it was hard to get consistent application of the guidance. We tried, we worked through that, but it was hard to get consistent application, and it needed an eye to detail. So I thought this might be a way to help support that eye for detail. But I didn't develop it thinking that we were gonna, I just developed it because it's a useful thing.
Okay.
I can share
That's
my
helpful.
screen and show you if you want. Or maybe you have one, Jenna. I don't know if you have one handy or.
I do, but I am not on my work computer. I'm on my personal computer right now. So I don't have it on my personal computer to share. Sorry. I can send it though right away to Peter or Jean.
Yeah, if it's okay, we can send something out after the meeting to just, get the description a little more down pat. It can maybe be an addendum to the minutes as they come up.
What I like about this kind of approach is that, is besides putting the work where the staff are and people who are familiar with it, with having Christine or Shreng and Peter involved, there's this constant feedback loop.
Yep.
As these things are reviewed and comments are made and input. And my guess is that Jenna will get, and her staff will get very proficient at this based on that feedback. And secondly, it retains the board's kind of oversight and responsibility around ensuring public health. And so it kind of fits nicely that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like I've chatted with Carrie and Peter about as well, the programs that are run through Recreation or any youth organization that's organized and submits field fees and permits and all that, they sign a waiver that they're adhering to the guidelines. And all of these organizations and all these programs that are on our town website that folks register for, we oversee. So we pop in, we make sure that things are running well. If we do get a complaint like we did last year that a whole T-ball team wasn't wearing their masks, so that wasn't good. So we had send out a whole email. He said, hey, we're going to be monitoring the games. If this happens one more time, like, we have to shut T-ball down. Please follow the rules. But I think it was just an innocent oversight with that particular team. So But just so you're aware of that as well, these aren't random vendors or random
Right.
people who
Right.
don't know the rules. They're organized vendors who have to submit COVID plans to several other towns, and these youth organizations have to get their rules and regulations from their official boards, and some of them the state of Massachusetts. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of a good feeling as
Yep.
well, that these aren't just someone off the street that's
Right.
coming in to do a program.
What I like is, as you say, Rick, is keeping the board involved, because you know, we are asking for rec to take on a role of a regulator that's a little bit different than they've had to fill in the past. As I said, the guidance isn't straightforward, and to be honest, I mean, people don't like the guidance, right? You know, people don't like it, and it ought not be solely on the shoulders of the health of the recreation department.
Right.
You know, that's a I think it's very appropriate, since they're working with folks and they know the programs they can look through, but it ought not be solely on their shoulders. And I'm grateful, Christine, if you do have the time. I agree with Paula that I was concerned with the contact tracing piece. But I also will say that truly, once you get familiar with the guidance, it's actually pretty quick, you know.
Mhm.
It is pretty quick, and I'm
Mm.
happy to do an in-service if anybody wants one. Paula's
Yeah,
saying
that
the
would-
same, right? Yeah.
That would be great.
Yeah.
If there's a brief lapse here in discussion, I don't mind adding a few more things. And, you know, Paula's always thinking of her sister nurses, or whatever we call them, which is a good thing. We need to watch out for one another on that, but this probably should have been my last point, because it would be a segue into where we're going after this discussion. But you know, school nurses will be getting out of school and helping us do some summer programs. I can envision that. Our nurses, I mean, Schwang, for the hours that she was hired for, is doing a lot of work. Christine too. So when Christine took a step back and said, yeah, I can squeeze it in. I'd like to see Christine move to more of a managerial piece with some, you know, seasonal nurses, temporary, to help us go through these, you know, really busy times. And so there's that piece. If there's any doubt that Christine can't handle it, we do have some money in budget, and I think Jean will be able to bear me out on this, in case we need a nurse for a few hours, a particular week when we're getting in. So there's that. There's the piece about my Tuesday morning meetings with the Region 3B. And when I brought it up last week, they looked at Reading as if we were like overachievers on what we do. For example, Andover does the same thing, except they don't review anything. They just put it in a file. If there is an incident, they go to the file and they pull it out. It's not quite preventative, but in a way it is, because they at least can do the contact tracing. But they're not going through the whole review, send it back to the applicant revises, review it again. Sometimes it takes, Kerry will tell you, takes more than one or two revisions before we get it together. So let's see, I think it was Methuen does it sort of the way we're proposing it tonight, except it goes all the way up the flagpole to the mayor. After Rec starts it, it goes through health. The mayor wants to be the last one to sign off on all these rec forms. So, and everything in between, the people were kind of looking at me as if, why are you doing this again? So I think we have something in place that's a lot more comprehensive than other folks do. And I offer that just to let you know what the rest of the world is up to. And I think, Jenna, and you can take it back from here, Jenna, that you told me other cities and towns that you know of, it's handled by Rec.
Yeah. And I'll I mean, I think sometimes that's good, sometimes that's not, because I have gotten direct feedback from athletic organizers that no other towns don't ask them to do these kinds of things. And I mean, I know people are tired of COVID, but we've made a commitment that, we believe the guidance is appropriate. And, the requirements aren't really that onerous. And then I'll make it a little personal. I'll say, I've watched somebody on a vent for 8-10 days. And I don't wish that on anyone. And it's that serious, even though we have vaccines, even though we have, a lot more control over the pandemic, this is still serious. And I'm glad to be in a town where we do treat it seriously and where we consider that the regs are important. And, I want kids to be able to play too. Like you say, Jenna, nobody wants to say, stop playing TiVo. That is not the goal at all. But so, I mean, I'm glad to hear that we are, doing it well. And I do thank you, Jenna, for being willing to take this on and do that first review. I think it'll be a nice partnership with health to make that move quickly.
So Peter and I, Paula, did you want to say something? No, okay. Peter
No,
and
I'm
I,
sorry, this is Christine.
yes, Christine.
Yep, I'm sorry. If I could just add as well, I do field quite a bit of these types of calls as well. And I can just give 2 brief examples. Like one was a call about, inquiring about how many people are allowed to be out in a public activity. It was an umpire sort of training session on a field at one point in time. And another request, will the high school be able to have a prom, that sort of thing. So just to be involved in, the review of the process and.
Yep. I think that makes sense. Yeah, of course you're going to field those kinds of calls. That makes a lot of sense. We ought to be kind of in step. Sure.
Peter and I, based on this, and I'm hearing general agreement that this is a good way to approach it, we crafted a motion. We thought it would be a good idea to actually have a formal motion on the books for this. And so I'd like to advance a motion that we authorize the following process for recreation and civic function permits to ensure the adherence of COVID-19 public health safety and guidelines. And that would be that the Reading Recreation Administrator will initiate the application process for recreation civic function permits and recommend changes as needed consistent with statewide COVID guidelines. That the lead public health nurse would then review the permit recommendations made, providing further input and feedback, and that the health director will provide final sign-off with respect to the permit's public health recommendations. So I'd like to forward that motion.
I'll second it.
Paula second. Roll call, Paula,
Yes.
Carrie,
Yes.
Rick, yes. Okay, that
Okay.
motion passes.
Thank you
Excuse
all.
me, Mr.
Thank
Chairman.
you.
I want to again thank Kerry, but thanks Jenna for doing this. It's going to be great. And B, I think the board made a very wise decision because Christine is our foremost expert in infection control, and she is going to be an integral part of this moving forward. Thank you very much for that vote.
Okay. Thanks, Jenna.
Thank you.
You're welcome to stay
Jenna.
all night, but
Thanks,
Thank
Jenna.
you. Have a great week, everybody. Great rest
See you,
of the
Jenna.
week.
You too.
Bye.
okay, so moving on to contract outsourced professional services. So we sort of touched on this very briefly at the last meeting about what to do with the vacancy in the health agent position, soon to be a health director vacancy. And, Peter, I think the plan was in the interim to have Peter try to identify individuals for limited contracts. And we thought that for the sort of for administrative purposes, it would be a good idea to have a motion on this. But I don't know, before we do that, Peter, do you want to elaborate on what your thinking is about how you fill this gap?
I'll keep it brief, but I mean, it's pointed, so brace. And I'm gonna require some trust going forward too, but you know, here's the scenario. Laura left, a fellow that was helping us with the animals, who worked for the police department, has left. That's a guy I never met before. This time of year, we are getting all the dogs licensed. The kennels need to be inspected in the doggy daycares. I'm not certain even how many are there. We can dig that up easy enough from our town clerk. But we need someone to fulfill the role of inspector of animals. This is a mandated requirement. Jean has the paperwork, and I have a person who will do it on a fee-for-service basis. She will handle dog bites, which we've already had one of this week, and wounds of unknown origin. This is when a pet goes out and returns with a puncture wound of something, and we don't know if he's got in a scramble with a wild animal, and there's a whole protocol that has to be done at that point. So this inspector of animals is one. We have 2 restaurants right now waiting to have their plans reviewed so that they can prepare for a permit application. They can open for business. I think that's pretty, I don't know, outstanding. I think it's progressive that in the middle of a pandemic, excuse me, here that we're seeing businesses, we don't want to be, you know, the entity that stifles them.
Right.
So I have someone who can help us with plan reviews that can't be done in-house until I get back, which is not until scheduled to be about the middle of May. There are complaints coming in. Everybody's cleaning their yard. They're stacking piles, and neighbors are starting to call in on, you know, we saw this, why can't we do something about that? We need a person, and Jackie's looking at me, I think I'm reading the body language. There's 3 ladies in that area. I can only imagine it. I've been in town hall like 3 times in my life, but I see those folks sitting there, and they're fielding calls, and they're forwarding them off. And Daniel is not able to handle every level of call. So we have someone who is good with customer services, knows the health codes, and you know how to resolve them, or at least begin a process where if we have to take legal action, it'll be on solid ground. So, and then there's the food inspections. Daniel can't do it all. We have a 2-hour per week fella helping us out, and I'm certain, except for this last week, I'm starting to get some information coming back on how many inspections are done. We heard this year, but what was going on last year and so forth. So we need help. And I have folks who do this. It's kind of typical in the industry. For 30 years, I've used contracted inspectors and damages, and to do the preliminary work, get out there, identify any violations, and let the staff know back at town hall so we can take appropriate action. There's absolutely no authority that these folks are going to get that cause them to be decision makers, letter writers, or any of that business. So there it is. And I like the vote of the Board of Health, as Rick was saying, and Jean, of course, coached me into this level so that we can begin the process. And if the vote votes tonight, if the board votes tonight, that is, I have folks that are ready to begin tomorrow. We'll get them hooked up with the paperwork as vendors so that by Monday morning, they can start submitting bills on a bi-weekly basis. We can start paying them and give them a, what's it called, at the end of this tax year?
W.
9/11, not a W-2.
1099.
Yeah, 1099.
Yes.
A 1099.
Independent contractors.
Yes.
They're not employees. And
Right.
when we don't need them, it's as simple as, we don't need you right now. That's all I've got. And I'm looking for your support next.
And these are experienced, I'm sorry, Rick, I'm sorry. And these are experienced individuals with, you know, a good track record of work in other communities and all their proper licenses and the like that, you know, would be suitable to use in Reading, right?
That's correct. I can vouch for them. Personally, I've used them in my previous life.
Yep.
I shouldn't say life. That's kind of crass, but as a director in Danvers,
Yep.
these folks have been with me for a long time.
Yep.
Some are students, some are former students from the
Yeah.
community college and so forth, and they do have paperwork to back their
Right.
credibility.
I mean, sounds great to me.
Yeah, makes perfect sense.
Does make sense.
You need
So on
help right
that-
away.
On that basis, I'd like to, as Peter said, make a motion. We have a lot of motions tonight, so just bear with me. I'm not used to this formality, but this is what it is. So a motion to authorize interim health director Peter Morandi to secure on a limited interim basis outsourced contract professional services for the management of environmental and animal health inspections and complaints.
Second,
Second. Roll call, Paula,
Yes.
Carrie,
yes.
Rick, yes. All right, go to it.
Thank you. I'm gonna turn on a backlight here, excuse me.
So as we talked about also, a lot of these are follow-up from last time. The state put out this grant program to encourage local boards of health to work with other cities and towns based on the Blueprint for Excellence that got published a year and a half ago. And Jean has been doing some work on this and wanted to get an update on that.
Sure, thank you. So the name of the grant is the Public Health Excellence Grant Program for Shared Services. It is a sizable grant that is intended to fund for 3 years the cost of bringing in additional resources, whether it's through hiring or contracting. And it's really designed to, as Rick says, step up the performance of local health and be more in line with what's been recommended in the Blueprint for Excellence. The statutory requirements are really the emphasis, but certainly having a broad array of public health services shared with 2 or more communities obviously is a much more efficient way to deliver those services. And as we began to think about it, you know, Reading, even though we only have 1 full-time staff person in the health division, Reading has a lot of expertise and a lot of depth. And it's a lot of pieces of, you know, under Peter's leadership now with his extensive experience and our team awesome of nurses that goes, of course, Christine and Shuang, but certainly we have a whole array of other nurses, school nurses, I keep saying, amazing. So we have all these resources kind of in a cobbled together way. And when we think about a 2 community consortium, it seems manageable. We were, I think you probably all know, we were part of a 3 community compact that was Melrose, Wakefield, and Reading. And that really was too big for the amount of resources that we had. It wasn't a district that it was too big, but given the resources we had, it was too big. So that's when we shifted over to the model that we have now. But thinking about this regional idea, we reached out to the town of Linfield, and Peter really took the lead talking to some of the area communities. And because he's in the field, he knew that Linfield really didn't have much and is struggling. I think the fire chief is sort of the person over there. So we thought, oh, maybe Linfield might be interested. So I did a little bit of preliminary work and attended a webinar on a little more deeper dive into the grant. And then we reached out to Linfield and they were doing backflips. They loved the idea. So it turns out we're going to be at the meeting, their select board, I believe it's a select board and a combined board of health meeting on Monday. and they wanted to see some of the work that I've been doing. I was like, yes, great, but wait a minute, we have to get, we have to discuss it here a little bit more. This was kind of just an idea, and I did a little bit of work on it, and I have some ideas about it, but this is really something that the Reading Board of Health needs to discuss and hopefully vote on, because that's where it needs to start. It would be a scenario where Reading would be the lead community. And so that allows us to, you know, have a little more, I don't want to say control, but we'll have a lead role on this, and think about how we want to structure it. And it's a little bit more admin money when you're the lead, but that's not really why we would be the lead. But that's basically the grant. It's for, in my opinion, the way I look at it, for the most part, staffing. There's some upfront startup costs that really plays well into where we're at, because I think the board is aware that as of July 1, everything moves over to the police station.
Yep.
And this is now an independent department of its own. So it's no longer public services, it's the health department. It's the, I think, 9th department head that we're hiring. So in, 90 days or whatever it is, however many days that is, April, May, June, yeah, about 90 days, this will be its own department, and it'll be physically in another location. That's a lot to happen in 90 days, but on paper, that's what's supposed to happen. I've offered to, I'm not going to abandon ship June 30th. So to whatever extent, there's some role for me to play or some value to my time, I'd be happy to continue to do whatever. But the opportunity there is to think about some startup costs to get that whole new office started. I mean, we need FF&E is what I have always called it. Probably some type of build out, some type of, I don't know, I've never even seen the space over at the police station, so I'm totally out of my lane talking about this, but I know there's some amount of money that's needed to set up an office, and I'll stop there. So I in my mind, loosely budgeted for that as a startup cost, and then an annual budget that would be 6 figures to provide the resources and staffing needed to meet all those statutory requirements and then some.
So did you say police or fire?
Police.
Police,
Okay, just clarifying.
Yep, police.
police station.
And so go ahead, Kevin.
So it's just Linfield that we're going to be together with?
Yes.
Okay, so it seems like this is a largely beneficial aspect for them, obviously, right? That they're about to get a ton more resources that they don't have currently right now at their disposal. And so to ask this question and crudely as I can, what's in it for us? Someone had to ask.
It's a good question.
The grant that is available, it's up to 300,000 a year. I mean, it's potentially 900,000. And so that would, when we talk about shared services, obviously Reading will benefit from having a more robust staffing level.
So this is going to get us for 3 years, you said, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
This grant will be in play for, and then, I suppose that's a problem for 3 years from now, to figure out where it goes from there.
The webinar that I attended, they made it seem like there was a lot more money coming like this.
Okay.
Because of what we learned about resources for public health.
Yeah, it just falls under the line of, feel like we're starting something up that has an end to it, but may have a pulling the rug out from underneath Linfield kind of feeling to that end, if it goes that route. But my assumption with this is, along the way, I tend to like it, because I think if we can get this money, we can certainly be able to hire more independent contractors as needed. As everyone in this room knows that, you know, the end of COVID isn't just a vaccine. It's going to go on past that point, and there's going to be a lot of need past that point to have a robust health department. So I think, you know, in getting us through that, I do like that end of it, that aspect of it. I do worry about the end aspect of it though, and how that's going to look and play out. But again, you know, I'd rather, this is one of those times I don't mind that now, knowing we got 3 years to figure that out.
There's one more thing that I didn't emphasize as much, and it's very, to me, probably the biggest thing about this grant. It's really hard to hire people for these kinds of jobs. So the public health director position, I hope I'm wrong. I hope I'm so wrong, but I think I've said this before. I have been trying to hire a commissioner of buildings, a building commissioner, since August. This is my third try. And I've had candidates and I've had interviews and you know, HR has been great. And it's just for one reason or another, I cannot hire this job.
All the good ones are making too much money in the field right now.
It's a really hard time to hire, and we don't have a lot of people with these kinds of all the stuff in public services. You have to have very unique, specific skill sets. And so it's just a limited pool of people and a really hard time to hire. So my long-winded answer is, I really think that this becomes an exciting opportunity for someone who wants to be in a leadership role in public health, and adding a second community to me seems like it would make the job more appealing. That's just my 2 cents worth, but I think that's important.
Harry, you had your hand up.
I think Paula was ahead of me. I'll defer to her
right,
if
thank
that's
you.
okay.
Jean, do you have, or Peter, do either of you have a sense of what Linfield's bringing to the table?
Well, I mean, Linfield, we're going to meet Monday night. Linfield, as you know, they're a very small town. It's a third of the population of Reading almost. I don't know how many establishments they have. Obviously, Market Street is significant, but my sense is that, and I don't know, but my sense is that they need help probably in a more discreet way than we do. I think our needs are pretty consistent. We have a lot of food establishments, 150 something, 160 food establishments. We have a lot of complaints. We have a lot of demands in public health. So by being sort of a resource to Linfield, or combining, however you want to look at it, I think we get to leverage more for Reading because we now have that robust staffing. I don't know enough about Linfield to say, well, Linfield could offer this or Linfield could offer that. I don't really know yet.
Okay.
Well, it sounds like the biggest thing that they offer is the fact that we can get the grant by bringing them aboard, right? I mean, that to me would be would
They have a
absolutely be the
need.
biggest thing.
Yep.
Yeah.
They're a dance partner.
Right.
Yep, exactly.
Harry,
If we can come back, excuse me, just a moment, we can come back, let Carrie go, but I can come back and add to Jean's, response to Paula's question on that one. Go ahead, Carrie.
Yeah, so thanks, Peter. So I'm a little familiar with this program. So this would be a full shared services arrangement, full responsibility for all of the statutory requirements for the communities. Because there are some shared service arrangements that are do kind of like a cafeteria version, and maybe say we're gonna share food inspections and septic or whatever, but not get into the full range. So this is for the full boat, a joint health department, essentially. Is that correct?
I don't have a lot of detail.
I know.
So
Yeah.
I'll preface my answer with, I haven't talked to Linfield yet.
Right.
My sense is that yes, they don't have anything. They have a fire chief.
Right.
So I'm guessing now, do they have a lot of other needs? I think what I think they have is a lot of needs for septic.
Yep.
And I'll let Peter talk when he responds, but you know, we could craft something almost as a pass through on the septic, because right now, you know, contracting that out, I think, is where we're at with septic.
Right. So, right. So, I mean, this is definitely shared services, and this kind of model is what's seen as a way to move the delivery of public health services forward in the Commonwealth, because there's such a variation zip code by zip code on what you get, particularly once you're outside 495. And you know, there are variations, right? Reading has a little bit of septic, or maybe none, I'm not sure, and Linfield needs septic, you know, so you can kind of build a department that takes that complements and creates a full need, where you might have a quarter of a need or a half of a need for something. So you know, I understand the premise. I think that it's great that we have a dance partner, and I think that you're right. I think that it may be appealing to somebody who, you know, has run a department and is interested in spreading their wings a little bit, and looking at how do you do delivery across 2 communities. I think it's great that we're moving, you know, able to move forward and think about applying. Yeah, and I think that right now what they bring, as you said, Kevin, what Linfield brings is the need, and the willingness to participate in the problem solving, right? They don't just sit back and say, you take care of these things. They contribute something in terms of the how do you solve this? How do you address all of the needs that exist? So I see lots of pluses for it. Peter, I'm curious what you want to
Yeah, thanks for circling that back. I'm not sure. I know Kevin said in the crudest way, it really wasn't crude. That's not, I'm not saying it for Reading. And I think Paula might have brought something up too. Whatever the case is, the essence of it and the timing of this essence is really great right now. You've heard me say more than once or twice that one of the reasons I feel we were not getting access to vaccine is because we didn't have relationships within this region. And we get rewarded. Communities get rewarded when they collaborate with other communities. The 351 cities and town model, and I've always been a proponent of that. I think it's great for a number of reasons I'm not going to go into. But the state and any business model will say that stinks. So now we have a fire chief in Reading, we have a fire chief in Linfield, who are both, you know, are veterans of the pandemic. That's where you were getting your vaccines in Linfield. That's where you've been getting your vaccines here in Reading. So we come together on that, and together, I mean, it's called synergy. I had a student one time tell me that, you know, when we were trying to explain synergy, that the Beatles together were way better than they were individually.
right.
So it's
The
more
sum of-
greater than the sum of the parts. And that's the big thing.
Yep.
It gets us out there as a, you know, moving forward public health agency, a local public health department, and Reading too, and I mean, and Linfield too, and it's going to offer all kinds of opportunities. It really is.
Yep.
So that's my 2 cents worth, and I'll.
Can I ask Jean about, in doing some reading on this, the intent of the grant up to $300,000 a year is not to, for that to pay for existing positions, but it's only for incremental positions to be able to have a more robust program. And so does that mean that for Linfield, which apparently has nothing, so they must have, however, 2 or 3 vacancies. They must have 2 or 3 funded positions that just aren't filled. So those would be funded by Linfield, and the additional dollars would go to additional staffing for this combined program. Is that how I'm thinking?
Yeah, they say multiple times, no supplanting, no supplanting,
Exactly.
no supplanting.
No
So,
supplanting.
yeah. So let's like say for nursing, because nursing's been so crucial. We were talking about this earlier, you know, however contract or hire, or existing staff want to work 1,000 hours a week or whatever it is, you bring in more capacity on nursing, and that costs X number of dollars. And then you bring more capacity on these inspections and these outsourced contractors that we keep talking about, and you really ramp up on inspecting and thising and thating. And then there's maybe there's a company we hire that we contract out with for septic, and anytime there's a septic thing, there's the septic. Oh, and the one thing that they also require is that there be make sure I get it right, a shared services coordinator, which is very important, so that somebody is at the helm managing this, not in the trenches managing.
That would be under the health director.
Yeah, this would be like a new role.
Okay,
Nothing in existing budgets. It would be a new, somebody has to be a shared services coordinator.
mhm.
So that would be a good part of the budget as well. And then the admin staff, we know all too well, when Jackie came on board, it was just, we were, heads and shoulders better than when we didn't have the admin support. So,
Yep,
Absolutely.
and as
100%.
as the host community, you can add a little bit more to the admin. So that's a benefit too.
So would this provide, we had talked about, we keep pushing it off because there's so many fires to put out, but
Right.
we had talked about a community health assessment and a community health improvement plan. Would these, if we were to get this grant, that would help facilitate having a richer staffing that would allow for potentially new types of educational programs, screening programs, for conditions beyond just the daily, inspections and so forth. Is that, Carrie, maybe you have an idea?
Well, I mean, you just, sorry to hop in, Jean, but it's a really interesting question, Rick, because what it does actually is that it kind of opens the field when you're doing your assessment, because there's identification of issues that maybe you suddenly have the flexibility to address that you would not have been able to address had you been operating in a solo thing. So yeah, that's really, it's interesting. I don't I don't know how the mechanics would work out in it, but it certainly makes it makes that health assessment process, I think, even more exciting, because if you can then, if you think down the road, you have a community partnership, and then you apply for other grants, right? You can start, maybe that changes the purview of the substance abuse coalition, maybe not, just speculating, pure speculation, but
That's
or
what
maybe
my
there
mind.
are, right, and maybe there are other kinds of municipal grants that you identify opportunities to apply for, just because you're sharing that space, and you have a better understanding of each other's strengths and needs. It's a nice kind of it's sort of a seed money in that piece. And then I'll just say, Kevin, you were saying something about the what happens at the end. So this is all part and parcel of a recognition, a growing recognition, that of the lack of funding that public health across the Commonwealth has gotten. We're one of the few states in the country that doesn't have dedicated funding from the state to municipalities to support public health services. Most states receive some dedicated state funding that supports like just a basic floor of public health services. And there's, this Blueprint for Excellence, these other pieces are all things that are part of that growing recognition. There is some funding in the current state budget for, it's supporting actually these grants. And there's anticipated further funding. And people are dreaming big and saying that there needs to be cherry sheet funding for public health, just like there is for roads and other things. So that's 3 years down the road. Perhaps there's been progress made. And I think that grants like these, activities like these are ways to demonstrate the value of the funding, and build the case for, why you can do so much better if you have a little bit of money and you got something to build on.
Sure.
Sorry.
That makes sense.
Sorry, that was a very long thing, but
I would also expect that this is going to free up the health director, in Reading, no matter what your title is, you're in the trenches all the time. And wow, wouldn't it be nice if someone in a senior management role could do senior management stuff?
What a unique
What a
idea.
luxury.
Yeah, do some planning,
Right. See the forest beyond the trees. Yeah.
do some forecasting, maybe anticipate as opposed to react. Yeah.
So, so sounds like the board is certainly in support of this, and I think Jean thought maybe having a motion to formalize that, another motion, would be a good idea.
Well, I want
I
to
would
thank
like-
Jean for all her work on this, because
Absolutely.
And
Thank you.
Peter and I are working together.
thank you both.
Um,
Great.
And I asked the question, it's not a requirement of the grant, but I asked the question at the webinar, does the Board of Health need to vote on this? I mean, why would I write a grant and not be in sync with the Board of Health? I suppose that could happen, but doesn't seem like a good approach. And I thought, if I were at the state, I would want to see like a vote, like, yes, the Board of Health agrees, and they took a vote and it's in the minutes. So, so they randomly said, oh, that would be great if they could, and left it at that. And I was like, all right, well, let's see if we can get that. Maybe you can help us win the grant. I don't know.
Yes.
So I'd like to make
Letter
a
of
motion
support.
to enthusiastically support the joint applications of the towns of Reading and Linfield for the Public Health Excellence Grant Program for shared services.
Second,
Second, Paula second. Roll call. Paula,
yes.
Carrie,
Yes.
Rick, yes. So I guess we're not gonna know the outcome because it's due April 1st, and our next meeting is after that.
And I think they're going to make a decision quickly because they want to get this thing. We have to put a budget together for May and June, and then the next fiscal year. And it sounds like they're moving quickly.
Okay.
So there's a meeting on Monday with Linfield folks, is that right? Is that what you said? Yeah. And
Yeah.
is that something that members from Reading could attend if they were available or interested?
Well, you have to worry about quorum.
Right.
It's it's a select board meeting. I think it's a joint meeting with the Board of Health.
I say Carrie goes.
Yeah, so I guess within the open meeting law, yeah.
I mean, I would be interested in attending. I don't know if there are others that are attending, and we should discuss that if there are, and whether we, have to post ourselves or whatever. I'd be interested in observing. I'm not gonna make any trouble.
Too late to post.
I was going to offer, but I mean,
Oh, it is.
it's okay. You can
It's okay.
feel free.
Well, let's do this. When's the meeting?
Monday, I
5
don't know.
o'clock.
I'm starting at like 5 in the morning on Monday, so there's some.
Yeah.
I think it's a 5:30.
I can do that. So,
Can I offer something right here?
Yeah.
Bob might want to weigh in on this. He's got me on standby. And yeah, I think this is going to be his level type stuff. This is rock my world type of decision making for Linfield. And, Reading too, but Linfield has really got to come around a little bit, and they have a town administrator and assistant town administrator. That's a great offer, Carrie and Paula. I mean, could we defer until Bob has some time to think about it and decide who we would like there? And so everybody's comfortable talking frankly, I'm just thinking,
Well, it's an open meeting, right?
yes, it's an open meeting. That's the last word I'd say.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly don't want to make anybody uncomfortable, but it's a open meeting. I can just lurk in the back and,
It'll be on a Zoom thing too, I suppose, and all that business. So, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, Gene, maybe there's a, maybe somebody can whisper in their ear to send an invite out. Welcoming invite from Linfield.
I don't
Gary.
know how they, I don't know anything about Linfield.
right.
I don't know if they do it the way we do. When we post the select board, the Zoom invitation isn't there.
Right.
You have
Well, I
to,
can always turn on my cable TV, right? Oh, well, maybe they don't broadcast live. All right, I don't know. We'll find
I
out a little
don't
bit
know.
more.
I
Who
don't
knows?
know I don't even really know when the meeting starts.
Yeah.
Terrible.
Maybe Peter and Jean can talk to Bob and circle back, and, let us know how it's gonna be done, and whether it's an open meeting, and we can all just sit at home and just look in as opposed to, participating, or whether.
Right, yeah, I mean, I don't have to participate.
Yeah.
But, well,
So let us know.
Yep.
Okay.
All right, I'm gonna move on to influenza vaccines for this fall. We have two items. One is to approve the expenditure of the revolving fund, which is currently booked at $25,000, to approve to spending up to that for flu vaccines for the fall. We talked last meeting about the importance of us continuing to do that work. So I'd like to make a motion to approve spending up to $25,000 of the revolving fund for the purchase of influenza vaccine. I have a second. Paula, second. Roll call, Paula.
Yes.
Carrie.
yes,
Okay, that's quick. We also, I don't know if there's been how much, Jean, you've been able to do with respect to Jerry's idea about a public-private partnership around flu vaccinations, and whether you're able to get in touch with that CVS person I put in touch with you or not.
I've tried. I've gone a couple times to see if I could shake the trees to make something happen, and I haven't come up with anything yet.
Okay.
But
I may have a contact also at Walgreens, and if CVS isn't responsive, they may be better at that. So I will let you know.
sure, let me know.
Yeah. I mean, I think that it's a great idea, and I want to pursue it. And I think that it's also something that, although there's a deadline for us to put in our orders for flu vaccine by the end of the month, it is something that if we could get an interested party to talk about this, we could work something out over several months. We don't have to do it right away. And there could be pieces that, as we talked about, they would pick up, and things that we could do. Maybe they could get us even more vaccine. But I don't think there's necessarily a deadline on trying to make this happen. Otherwise, other than it would be nice to, if we can get it to happen, to have it by the fall when we do that.
Yeah.
agree.
Okay, COVID updates. Christine?
Yes. Mhm.
Do you have any case counts? I saw you sent an email a little while ago. Do you want to give us highlights or on that?
Sure. Yep. So the total case count for Reading right now is 1,696. That was 1,697, although I did have to revoke a case because of a false positive antigen test. The current active case count for Reading is 63. There was 48 deaths the other day. There are now 49. There was a death yesterday, and transferred cases remain at 10. in my, moving on to the schools, on my weekly meeting, conducted with the director of the Reading Public School, Mary Juliana, she informed me that pooled testing continues twice a week, and they have completed approximately 400 pooled tests to date. Mandatory testing is for all athletes and extracurricular activities, and currently 93 pooled tests have been performed this week, so from 3/15 to 3/18. 2 of those pools tested positive and are currently under quarantine. There are 10 per pool. Excuse me, and some follow-up testing is being conducted. At the high school right now, there is so there are 10 school-related positive cases. 1 at the high school, 2 at the Coolidge, 2 at Parker, 2 at Killam, and 3 at Birch. And in the Killam school, there was school transmission identified with the help of pooled testing, and that has been reported to DESE. With regards to Austin Private School, the weekly meeting conducted with the head school nurse there, Kim Esikoff. I've been notified of 5 students and 1 staff. I should have made a notation here. 2 of the students are Reading residents out of that total. And lastly, clusters in the community identified. At the present time, I have been in contact with the director, Mary Grimmer, from Little Treasures Preschool. 2 students are positive and 1 teacher. The school at the present time is closed. I have been in contact with the Department of Public Health as well as the director, and the school will remain closed through Monday, the 22nd, for cleaning and further contact tracing and quarantining. Encore Dance Studio right now has 2 cases. I've been in contact with the owner. One of these cases is a Reading resident, and they are cleaning it right now, and contact tracing is being conducted. And Recreational Basketball has identified a positive coach and 4 players. Interestingly enough, 2 of the players attend Austin Prep and 2 attend Reading High School. I've requested a roster from the basketball coach, and I am working with DPH on contact tracing right now. Excuse me. And I did not incorporate any foodborne illnesses or other communicable diseases, but will definitely continue to do so in my monthly report. There were just none to report since the last time we met.
Great.
Carrie?
Thank you, Christine. I have a couple of questions. Thank you for the report and for the work. Well, one's an observation. First, I just wanted to let you know that the new EEA guidance for athletics requires that all sports maintain a roster, regular roster of those who are participating on every day, and that roster be made available to the Board of Health upon request. And that was added because there had been some problems across the state with sometimes sporting groups not being willing to share information when they were approached. So that was incorporated. I thought that was great that they listened, they recognized that there had been a barrier and tried to do what they could to support that. The last time we talked with you at length, you were talking about contact tracing, and we were talking about the numbers that were sort of lost to follow up, where there were folks who were not responding to you. And I just wanted to follow up on that and see if you continue to experience that, or if
I'm really glad you brought that up, Carrie, and I'm sorry, I did include in my report, it's at the end under like other and miscellaneous. I have noticed huge, a definite improvement in the participation with regards to contact tracing and giving us a call back in a timely manner. And so I just definitely want to let you know, I believe that something was posted, and so people are calling back. And even a couple of cases have occurred where they've called back before we were even notified of their positive test. So they're definitely paying attention, listening, and the calls have helped significantly.
Good.
And also, what's really been interesting is I'm trying to keep track of past cases at the beginning of the pandemic that tested positive. We're seeing some people now test positive for a second time. And I'm just kind of sort of making a mental note and jotting that down. I'm sure that the Department of Public Health is keeping statistics on it, but I'm just trying to do that for Reading.
Yes.
As well as any false positive tests that might be positive antigen, and then when followed up with PCR, the appropriate testing, and the case being asymptomatic, having to go back and revoke the case. And I know that a lot of other towns or public health nurses have sort of picked up on that as well, and we're like, let's find out what antigen test is being used. Is it the Binax? I mean, what sort of testing is being done?
Yes.
Just to keep track of that.
Yes, because that was one of the reasons for using the Binax test. That was why, I mean, Paula's nodding. That was the one that was performing the best. The others just weren't reliable. And so that was a plus for Binax, and why you could say, yes, let's go ahead and use it in the schools. So that would be really important to know.
Sure.
I'm really glad to hear that contact tracing is going better, that the responsiveness is back, and that's really, I'm happy to know that. I did hear the state Epi on Tuesday saying that she's going through a line listing by hand of new infections by new variants, and she's working that through to then notify communities. So it will be interesting to know if any of those reinfections that you have identified are the result of a new variant, or if they are in fact a reinfection of the same.
Yeah, I didn't even think of that, but I did listen to that on Tuesday. So yes, I will definitely make sure I keep on top of that.
Yeah, that'll be very interesting to know. Thank you for paying attention to that in that reinfection incidents. This with the variants, I think this is going to be we've got a lot of different things to keep track of now. My last question is just, I was speaking to somebody who was infected, has family members who were infected, who are in the schools, and they've recovered and they're fine, but they were talking about what's the likelihood of somehow appearing as positive in a pool and causing requiring a whole pool to have to then go for more testing. Are you aware of anything like that from Mary?
So no, I'm not. And to my understanding, and I can certainly call to verify this, but if someone had a positive PCR, they're really not recommended to test for up to 90 days, even if they fall into that category of an athlete or someone that should typically, or like a mandated, someone who's an athlete that should be in that pooled testing.
Right.
So I have not heard that, but it is a good question, and I wonder if if they're still falling into that testing. I'm sure some are.
Yeah. Yeah, I know there's been some different interpretation on whether folks have to whether they have to test, whether they are precluded or not. I've heard a lot of different conversations, so I'd be interested to know about that.
Sure, I can definitely look into that.
Yeah, thank you so much for all the work. I'm so glad that things are easing up a little bit for the whole community, but also for all of you who've worked so hard to do this content. facing and case
Yeah, thank
management.
you.
Yeah.
Christine, it's interesting to note that school-related cases account for almost a third of the cases in the town.
Mhm.
Is that surprising, or, because we keep hearing in this controversy about opening schools, that the risk is low and so forth, yet I think looking at your email, it's something like 15 or 18 out of 63
Yeah.
cases are school-related.
Mhm. So I do think some of it does have to do with sports. I think some of it has to do with play dates that occur on weekends outside of school, and then subsequently bringing it into the school. And I feel that with the more testing, they are able to pick up a lot of asymptomatic cases that may not have been detected because of the pooled testing.
In your conversations with the school nurses, is the school testing being pretty much embraced by the students and parents? I mean, do most of them
Yeah.
participate?
Yes, most of it. She gave me a figure of approximately 60% have signed on to agree to the pooled testing. Excuse me, and again, only the athletics and the extracurricular are mandated, but yes, let me just make sure that's correct. Yeah, 60%. She.
I think that's a little disappointing.
Yeah, that's lower than I
know.
Yeah.
I had heard initial sign up figures of about 40%. So I'll find the silver lining and say, what they've said is that as pool testing rolls out, they see a uptick. Not everybody's an early adopter, not everybody's going to sign up right away, and that folks get more comfortable with it and add on. But still, yeah, 60 is low.
Mm-hmm.
And as we look at opening the schools even more,
Right.
that makes me nervous.
Yeah.
It sounds like there's some education that needs to happen.
Yeah.
Sure. I can, I speak with the nurses pretty frequently up there, and weekly have a set aside time on Thursdays, and I can make that, definitely a part of our discussion in our next week's meeting.
Yeah.
That would be useful.
Yeah.
Or is it worth bringing to command and John Doherty perhaps, or is that hitting
Oh,
is that
no, sure. I think
too much bang for it?
Mm-hmm.
John,
I think it would be worth that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, John raises it, I mean, he talks about it in command, and we get the opportunity to ask him questions, and I've asked about, percentages and participation and the like. So yeah, I mean, certainly I'll raise that again. We can raise that, Peter, and kind of see what he says. I mean, they've been hoping that there would be an increase as folks realize that maybe it's not as invasive as they were concerned about, or maybe if they see another case, perhaps they say, oh well, maybe we ought to be participating in this. I don't know what the I don't know how much information they have on the barriers, what are people saying why they won't.
Right. And do you have a sense, Carrie, of what other cities and towns, what percentage they're getting?
I don't, but I can find out.
I'm just curious.
Yeah. I mean, it's a great question, and I can ask around and see what I can find out. I do know when it was discussed in command, John Doherty indicated that that the vendor was not saying that this was a low number. There was not concern expressed. So I know that, but I don't have any other data, but we can find out. I think it's a good question.
Well, the other part of it is it only lasts till the end of April anyway, doesn't it? The funding for it, and the initial funding is only till the end of
Correct.
April.
Mhm.
Correct.
So that if you
Um,
don't get a good turnout, then the likelihood of it being refunded goes down.
I don't know that there's how much the folks anticipate refunding, but I know that the schools have indicated that that this is a cost that they will figure out how to bear, that, you know, that the value of it for faculty, staff, and students, made it something that they anticipated funding. I know of other communities that have chosen not to do it for those reasons. They said it's so much money, we don't have dollars available to do it that way, and so they aren't using the DESI program at all.
Right.
So, yeah. Yeah.
No, I was just going to move on to vaccinations. I think we did get some doses this past week.
We
You-
did.
The dribble.
Schwung, I think Schwung, you and Peter, I know, talk a lot about, you know, and Christine, sorry, you know, what do we have? So, yeah.
You want to, Schwang, you want to elaborate on that?
Yeah, we talk about that almost every day. And I have some slides to share with you.
Oh, good.
So I'm gonna talk about the COVID-19 vaccine clinic updates, and it will including the vaccine orders and the vaccine delivery, and what's the current Massachusetts COVID vaccination eligibility status. And based on the meeting I attend, that's the interagency local board of health webinar this Tuesday and last Tuesday. I will also provide you with some information regarding the vaccination in affordable housing and homebound vaccination, the Massachusetts travel order revision, and the guidance on in-person learning from the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. And thank you so much for approving the spending for the flu vaccine. And I will briefly talk about the cost in the end. So here is the Reading vaccine tracker and cumulative vaccination number until March 12th. So we have vaccinated 163 phase 1 individuals with fully vaccinated, and you may see one more second dose in phase 1. That's because the participants received the first dose elsewhere. And for phase 2 groups, our first dose vaccinations are 156, and 97 out of 156 recipients received their second dose. And from the cumulative vaccination graph on the left, our first dose cumulative vaccination number is 319, and second dose is 261. And this graph shows the numbers of doses for Moderna vaccine we received since January 28th, 2021. This Tuesday, we received 250 doses, including 50 second dose delivered from Topsfield Board of Health. And we did not order any new vaccine for next week because the state will not provide the second dose at this time point, so we didn't order.
Excuse me,
And
Schwang,
Yeah.
excuse me for just one. They are not allowing us the order forms,
Right.
and so we can't order. And they've also instructed us that when we're giving the first dose, to let the client know that the second dose, they may not be able to rely on it from us. They might have to seek other sources to get the second dose. And I just wanted to clarify that piece a little more from Schwung. Thank you. I'm sorry, Schwung, keep going.
Sure, no problem. And this is the Massachusetts COVID vaccination eligibility status. So as you may know, K-12 educators, childcare workers, and K-12 school staff are eligible for vaccine appointments starting from March 11th. And currently, the states recommend to get vaccinated at pharmacy like CVS because in addition to the state aid location, the federal government distributes vaccine to CVS as a part of the federal retail pharmacy partnership. And we will always keep them updated as long as we get more guidance from state. And for the remaining groups, residents 60 plus and certain workers, including transit, grocery, utility, food and agriculture, sanitation, public works, and public health workers will be eligible to get vaccine on March 12th, which is next Monday. And residents 55 plus and people with one comorbidity, they can get vaccine on April 5th. And starting from April 19th, all adults in Massachusetts can get vaccinated. Okay, vaccination in affordable housing. So as you may know, all residents and the staff of public and private low-income and affordable senior housing are eligible for COVID vaccines. And according to the state, the vaccine order for affordable housing is different from our regular MCVP survey, which is the Massachusetts COVID-19 vaccine program. Yep. So first, they need to identify the number of residents and the staff who need to be vaccinated. And then they need to fill out the senior affordable housing vaccination planning survey for their first dose vaccine order and complete a weekly Google form to confirm their second dose needs. And their vaccine is provided by the federal government and must be used exclusively for affordable housing residents. And right now, states provide Moderna vaccine for affordable housing. And Reading have two locations for the affordable housing. One is on the Frank Tanner Driver, and the other is Elderberry Line. And here is where they are. So we plan to have a vaccine clinic at Reading Housing Authority on Frank Tanner Drive today, but due to some technical issues, fire department canceled the clinic today. But we will have two clinics for affordable housing, one at Franklin Tanner, 60 participants, and the other for Cedar Glen with 40 participants next Tuesday, March 23. Since we ordered 200 doses for affordable housing, so the rest will be used for the public. Okay, next. Homebound vaccination. So the state sent out a local Board of Health in-home COVID-19 vaccination support survey. Harry was wondering if we completed it. Yes, we completed last week because the states want to know how our community would like to handle in-home vaccine for our homebound residents. And the states also recommend to use single-dose Jason COVID-19 vaccine for homebound vaccination. And Reading chose to manage the homebound vaccination by ourselves. So our health department, fire department, and senior center are working together for Reading homebound vaccination. Since the first home vaccine delivery on February 19th, 2021, we have already vaccinated 35 homebound individuals. And because at that time, we only have Moderna vaccine, so fire department used Moderna vaccine for the vaccine home delivery. And they will have second dose homebound vaccination tomorrow.
Okay.
And this is news. So there are some updates regarding the Massachusetts travel order. So as of next Monday, the Massachusetts travel order will be replaced with a travel advisory. And the new advisory only applies to individuals who have been out of the state for more than 24 hours. The individual who have fully vaccinated, meaning received 2 doses of either the Moderna or Pfizer COVID-19 vaccine, or who have received a single dose of Janssen vaccine more than 14 days ago and do not have symptoms, they do not need to obtain a negative test prior to travel to or quarantine upon arrival to Massachusetts. So COVID-19 vaccinated individuals arriving in Massachusetts must have documentation of their vaccinations, including dates of administration available if asked. For example, the CDC COVID-19 vaccination record card can be used. I will show you on the next slide. So this exception does not include vaccinated individuals who have symptoms of COVID-19. So if you develop symptoms after you get vaccine, you must follow all testing and the quarantine guidance outlined in the travel rules. And this is the CDC vaccination record card. Usually we provide that in each clinic. So the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education gives some updates on in-person learning. So the plan of returning to full-time in-person school 5 days per week would process in 3 phases. The target date for elementary school is April 5th. So after that day, hybrid and remote learning models will no longer count towards meeting the required elementary school students' learning time hours. And the target date for middle school is April 28th, and the time for high school is to be determined. But meanwhile, parents will still have a choice for their children to learn remotely through the end of school this school year. And for some school districts, they cannot meet the target date. They can apply for waivers to take an incremental approach. For example, they can return in a hybrid model before processing to the full in-person instruction later in this school year. And if they have any question regarding the waiver, they can email this address. Okay, last is a brief calculation regarding our orders for flu vaccine. The one in the black is what we put in order right now, but it can be adjusted until the end of this month. So, so I multiply 60% of the current amount we request. We get this number of costs, and I also did a 61% of our current amount, and then I get this amount of cost. So I'm just want to share with you. Do you have any question about this? Okay.
No.
So
Thank you.
yeah, that's it.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Sean.
Thank
You're
you very
welcome.
much.
It was very
Thank
helpful.
you.
Chuang, it's Christine. I'm sorry, and I should have asked you this at the meeting earlier today. I have not heard. Has anyone reported any adverse reaction to any of the COVID vaccine to date, other than, you know, like a localized reaction, something that
I
needs
haven't
to be
heard.
reported on the Yeah. Okay. Good. I haven't.
I haven't heard any adverse reaction being
Mhm.
reported in our clinic.
Mhm.
One. There was one call for 911.
We do have an emergency situation, but the recipient, she is verbalized, she feel swallow throat, and but she said it resolved by herself. But just for safety, we called 911, and she has been sent to Leahy, Burlington. But that's not an adverse reaction.
No. No. Okay.
Yeah, all those clinics, thank you for keeping track of all those doses and who belongs to who and where they where they come from and why. I mean, it's complicated. It's a lot to keep track of. And I love that Reading is a little ahead and has taken care of their homebound population in advance of the state program. I think that's lovely. Particularly because the homebound program sounds a little bit more complicated. So, and it's not quite ready to roll out. So, you know, we've been able to take care of some folks that needed this early and before, you know, without some of the additional bureaucratic complications. So, well done.
Chuang, can I ask, are we confident that everybody who we gave the first dose to will ultimately, we will be able to provide the second dose as well? I know that the state may not give us any more first doses or what have you, but are we going to be able to close the loop on all those people?
Yeah, we actually ordered second dose separately. We put in an order for 80 doses last week, and we received 50 doses this week. And we totally received 250 doses this week. So for the rest 30 doses, I am communicate with the states and make sure we will get them. So we give all the participants their second dose if they have first dose in our clinic.
Great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Carrie, any updates from Incident Command or anything?
Yeah, from Incident Command, we spent a lot of time talking about different doses and where were they coming from, and you know, the plans for the senior and affordable housing clinics. So you know, that we're up to date on that. There was a discussion about reimbursements because we are getting to the place now of having to file for reimbursements for expenses, and Chief Burns has done some initial work on that. And, FEMA has changed the rules a little, so they'll bounce it back and figure out how, you know, shift other expenses to the CARES Act funding. You know, and when I say FEMA's changed the rules, it's not unexpected. You know, I mean, it tends to start off with a pretty broad scope for what can be bought and used, and then when the reimbursement comes through, then the requirements get a little narrower. So it's kind of a eternal frustration of the reimbursement program. You just deal with it. But so that's where they are with that. And yeah, I mean, that was yeah, so we're pretty well in sync with Command this time. It's nice.
Great. So any other items we need to talk about, cover? Kind of gone through the agenda.
Are you ready to talk about future agenda items? I know, I can't remember exactly where we ended up with the funding that's sitting in the budget for the internal assessment. Did we say we were going to put that on a future agenda?
Yeah, we can certainly talk about that. I do feel like, yeah, we should bring that up. We should follow up on the public-private partnership, and we'll have some information about the grant process and where that ended up. So yeah, those would probably be the 3 topics for next time, unless anything else comes up.
Great, thank you.
All right, so I get to make one last motion, which is motion to adjourn.
Second,
Second, roll call, Paula,
Yes.
Carrie,
yes.
Rick, yes. Thank you, everybody.
Thank
Night,
you. and
everybody.
Good night.
Time.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank you,
Bye.
Thank
bye.
you. Thanks.